You're listening to Strange by Nature, your guide to the strange, weird, unbelievable, and improbable wonders of the natural world.
Hello everyone, thanks for being here today. I am Kirk Mona and I am joined today by Rachel Ginza and Victoria Thompson. We are all professional naturalists who together have scoured the world for weird and wonderful wonders just to please your mammalian brain's desire for novelty. Isn't that nice? Let's do this.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. Rachel, are you recovered from last week's defeat in the
No.
Weird Ways to Die challenge?
No. Should we
Folks,
tell them
if
the
you-
odds?
We figured out if you just flipped a coin for each answer, it'd be like if you flipping it wrong 6 times in a row. Like basically it was 1 out of 64, I think is the odds.
Yeah.
It's not.
It's not great.
It was.
I guess I'm kind
in
of
theory,
recovered.
should have known better.
I truly
Yeah.
should have, honestly.
It just goes to show it's not always logical when nature attacks. But anywho, we are moving on. Episode 151 here. We are getting deeper and deeper into winter here in the Northern Hemisphere. And so what I've been teaching over the last, month or so here has been changing. Since we live in the Northland where it gets cold and snowy, I've been teaching a lot about winter and how animals survive. And so the big 4 survival strategies, if you don't know, are animals can stay active, they can hibernate, they can migrate, or they can die. And
Isn't it
that
MAD?
last one-
MADS? Is the
it
acronym MADS?
yeah, it sort of depends on how you which ones you include and don't include. But yeah, MADS, migrate, adapt. It kind of depends. There's different acronyms for it and what the letters stand for. But basically, it's staying active, hibernating, migrating, or dying. And that last one always really gets a funny look out of the kids' faces because death doesn't really seem like a survival strategy. But
I would agree.
when we get to talk about,
Tends to go
Yeah, but
against
then,
the whole survival aspect.
it leads into conversations about insects and lifespans and all kinds of fun topics. And that strategy is not my topic for this week's show. But just so I don't leave you hanging and being all confused, the actual strategy is to lay eggs and then die so the eggs or larvae survive the
Nice.
winter. So I said those are the big 4 survival strategies. There are other ones, and one of them is complicated, and that's torpor. And what makes it
Okay.
complicated is that our language is inexact. There's really no way through this morass other than some disambiguation. So allow me to clarify.
Yep,
Torpor
you said words.
is a state of reduced body temperature and reduced metabolic rate. And if you're thinking, gee, that sounds a lot like hibernation, you'd be right, as hibernation is really a type of torpor. So when an animal is in hibernation, you can also say they are in torpor. And the confusion, I think, comes in because there's something called daily torpor, which is usually like what I mean when I say torpor, like talking with kids. It's just like a short-term state, sort of like a mini hibernation. It may just be something the animals do to make it through a cold night. Some birds will do this. They can lower their body temperature and reduce metabolic functions until they
Like-
warm up in the morning and carry on with life.
Like goldfinches or
So-
chickadees, right?
Exactly, yeah. So you sometimes see a division between animals that are true hibernators and those that use daily torpor. And some people lump those all together and say, no, hibernation is just an extended torpor. The trouble is, of
The
course,
lumper
like we always
splitter.
say, nature laughs at our little boxes, right?
Yeah.
Things don't necessarily fit into one or the other. A great example is around here when winter gets really cold, raccoons will go into like a 2-week torpor state. And we don't necessarily call it hibernation. Like they torpor through the coldest days and then they rouse for the warm nights when they raid garbage cans and go to the bathroom before crawling into a big ball of other raccoons in a hollow tree and like sleeping, or to be more exact, torporing for 2 more weeks. So that doesn't really fit into this, short-term, long-term thing, right? So with that out of the way, I wanted to tell you about a potentially cool discovery, and it involves torpor. So it's kind of why I was bringing that all up. This was in the journal Nature Metabolism. Fairly recently, a group of 14 researchers published a paper called Induction of Torpor-like Hypothermic and Hypometabolic State in Rodents by Ultrasound.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So previously, apparently we had known, or I guess scientists had known, I didn't know, that if you stimulate certain parts of a mouse's brain, you can induce torpor. This was a very invasive and complicated procedure, though. The mice actually had to be genetically engineered to react to certain chemicals, and then those chemicals had to be injected into their brains. And what these particular scientists showed was that if instead of that complicated process, if they just placed a transcranial ultrasound stimulator very specifically on a certain part of the heads of mice and stimulated a very specific part of the brain with ultrasound, they could actually induce a torpor state in the mice without all the other invasive techniques. They actually, it's very cute, they put the little like transducers on the mice's head while they're in an MRI so they can make sure they got it like in the exact right spot.
That's really cute.
So the
Nice.
mice they used were a species that naturally has the ability to go into torpor. But what they showed was that they were able to induce this state in also in rats. And rats do not naturally go into torpor. So
No.
that's like, whoa, hold
Okay.
on. That's super cool. You can get this to happen in animals that naturally go into torpor, but potentially they feel they can induce a torpor state in animals that, or mammals that don't normally go into torpor. And that is part of what is super cool about this research. And you might be saying, well, okay, but why do we care? Why would we want to study this? Well, first off, from a purely research perspective, we want to understand how things work. And the more we understand of nature and science, the better. But from a practical standpoint, knowing how to induce torpor could be incredibly useful. People have long dreamed of using torpor as a state for astronauts to be in while traveling long distances in space. There are huge practical reasons why it is better to have your crew in a torpor state on the way to and from Mars, for example. People in torpor consume fewer calories, they use less oxygen, they don't have to deal with boredom, and they can be more effectively shielded from radiation.
Right.
However, there's more down-to-earth reasons we'd love to be able to induce torpor in humans. Patients having a heart attack or a stroke could potentially have a greater survival rate if we could slow down their metabolic processes. I imagine if paramedics could put a beanie cap on a heart attack patient and put them into a kind of medical stasis on the way to the hospital in the operating room.
Yeah.
I mean, that could
isn't
be
like a coma.
a total game changer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So like all science, though, this is a baby step. The paper keeps saying that they induced hypothermia and torpor, but what they really showed was that there was increased activity in the area of the shoulder blades, which is where brown fat is made and stored, and also that mice's tails heated up, which is one of the ways apparently that mice shed heat while getting ready to hibernate. And they also noted that the mice slowed down a bit and got more lethargic. What didn't happen, and I think this is pretty important to note, is that the mice didn't go into hibernation, right? This was more of a torpor state where they were just kind of reduced. They slowed down, they were cooling their bodies down, but they weren't like hibernating like I think we would normally think of, like these nearly frozen animals that are just totally out of it.
Yeah.
It was kind of a light torpor, although I think the most impressive part for me was that their heart rate went down by 47%,
Oh, wow.
which is
Whoa.
very substantial, which is pretty amazing. There has been some criticism of this research, of people saying, well, is this really what happened? Maybe this is just what happens when you heat up a mouse's brain with ultrasound, like they shed heat out of their tail. So there needs to be replication, and further study of this. Absolutely. And when you come to looking at humans, don't be thinking you're going to put on your torpor cap anytime soon. There's some real practical issues. Humans' brains are far larger and our heads are much thicker than that of a mouse or a rat. And so it definitely remains to be seen whether or not, there will someday even be a practical medical application of this effect. This may lead to a major medical breakthrough, in our lifetimes, or it may simply be another interesting quirk that, while interesting, isn't really practical. And I guess time will tell, and eventually we'll find out.
Cool.
Such cool
But
research,
that's what
though.
I have
Thank
for you
you.
this week.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. I thought it was pretty weird, the idea of using sound waves to put animals into torpor. And I was like, yep,
Yeah.
that's weird. We got to talk about that.
That's wild.
But what we're going to do is we're going to take a short break. And when we come back, we're going to find out, Rachel, what you've got for us this week.
Woo! Welcome back, everyone. So, as we mentioned, I believe it was last week or the week before, I recently-ish went to Florida, which is where my aunt and uncle live. And now, because they didn't want to die in the cold, apparently.
Fair enough.
That is a quote from them. My uncle said, "I don't want to die in a snowbank." And I'm like, that's fair. Anyway, while we were
No one
down
really
there... yeah. While we were down there, we went to several different parks and had a lot of really good nature experiences. At least I did. My family absolutely ditched me at a museum while I was checking out some nature stuff. And I walked around until I found them again. But one of the parks that we went to, as we were driving in and we all saw this fascinating little tortoise on the side of the road. And my aunt checked to see if anybody was behind us. We all got out of the car, left the doors open, and took pictures of the tortoise. And it was a great bonding experience.
Wonderful.
The tortoise
Okay.
that we found, the tortoise is the Gopher Tortoise. And it is it is vulnerable, and it was very exciting. We actually saw two while we were there, which was super fun because we were only there for an hour. But it is one of the largest tortoise and is in North America and is actually a native to North America as well. So they are active all throughout the year, and that's what I want to talk about this week. I just want to talk about this tortoise. Now there are a number.
Gopher Tortoise. Go for it.
Gopher Tortoise.
I've heard of them, but I don't know a lot about them.
Oh, they're really cute. Also, on a very different note, I will be posting this picture on our Instagram and on our social media. It will be from the tortoise from my trip, which is very fun. Now,
Nice.
The Gopher Tortoise it looks like just a regular tortoise, okay? So it has a domed shell. It's a terrestrial tortoise. It doesn't really hang out in the water, on the water, or anything like that. They are on land. They're really adapted for burrowing. They look like any other tortoise, to be fair. They have really big four limbs that they use to get around. Generally speaking, they can be about anywhere, maximum shell size or shell length is about 16 inches or 41 centimeters. So they're not huge,
pretty good
but
size.
it's a decent sized tortoise, right?
Yeah.
Now, these are herbivores. They go around and they are grazing whatever plants that they can find that are really low level because they don't get very, they're tortoises, so they can't reach.
They're
right?
not climbing trees.
They're not climbing trees. However,
The arboreal tortoise.
That would be amazing. That'd be so fun. Now, I bet you're all are
Till they fall on your
wondering,
head.
okay, so I'm talking about a gopher tortoise this week. It doesn't sound overly strange, right?
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
It
Not that
doesn't sound
weird.
super strange. We've done some wild things, and some of it is the fact that I feel like we get jaded sometimes on how strange things are. We think it's normal and it's not. Anyway,
Yeah.
the gopher tortoise is really unique in the way that it burrows. Gopher tortoises are just like any of the other tortoises in gopher. There's a genus of Gopherus, which is a wonderful genus name.
Nice. I like it.
The scientific name for the gopher tortoise is Gopherus polyphemus. Fabulous. Fabulous
Nice.
name. Easy to say. Love it. When we were in this little state park, we kept finding all of these like netted or like fenced off little holes in the ground. And we kept wondering what they were for. And my aunt was like, oh, those are for like, they must be egg stations or whatever, where the eggs were laid. And we looked at a little bit more, and they're not where the tortoises lay eggs. Gopher tortoises actually dig really long burrows. So they spend most of their time underneath the ground, and they dig burrows that are 15 feet long.
Wow.
And 6.5 feet deep.
I guess hence the name.
Whoa.
Gopher.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There you go.
They can go deeper. They have found burrows that actually go up to 10 feet deep, and they can even be up to 48 feet or 15 meters in length. It depends on the sand and the other materials that are in the area while they're burrowing and digging. But that's where they spend most of their time to help protect them from predators, from any cold, fire, anything like that.
Wow.
But what's
fire.
cool,
wow, that's fascinating. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So they need a decent size amount of space to be able to live about 4 acres. But what's cool about that is because of the burrows, they're actually providing shelter and space for at least 360 other species.
Wow.
So they are
they're a keystone species.
Are a keystone species, especially they're primarily found in the Southwest, so like Texas, Florida, Georgia, and all of that. But the amount of species that rely on this tortoise and their burrows is phenomenal. For example, they are really important for species of like gopher frogs or several different snakes. Like the eastern indigo snake will also use the tunnel to live and be able to find food and such. It's not just permanent refuge. Sometimes it's just temporary, and will live with the other creatures as they are in the same space. Like if the tortoise is there, they'll live with them. If they're not, they won't. But they're also really important actually for burrowing owls, which will use the tunnels that are created from the gopher tortoise as well. Yeah. So it's not a super strange creature that I have this week, but I really wanted to talk about gopher tortoises because we talk about keystone species and how if you take one species out we've talked about it before where some animals are more important in certain environments and ecosystems than others. Not that any animal is necessarily not important, but a keystone species impacts many more, and the habitat and the structure and the homes and of that particular habitat than others, and taking it away is pretty detrimental. And this is just a really cool creature that I was able to find and actually see in the wild. And I wanted to share. It was really cool.
That's awesome.
That's really neat.
That blew me away with the
Yeah.
Makes sense why they call it gopher tortoises, that they have like a 6 foot
and the fact that
that's so long,
it's a very large burrow. Like I can't imagine. I'm like, okay, you could bury a body in that, but it's so deep.
That's where your brain goes?
That's where my brain did go. But to be fair, I listened to a lot of true crime, so that is also fair. I will say one thing that was wild for me
Don't
was...
go camping with Rachel.
One thing that was really wild to learn about in Florida was because of the protectedness of the gopher tortoise habitat. They actually are pretty sensitive to hurricanes. So there's a Hurricane Ian, for example. Some of the tortoises were actually like picked up and like moved from one space to another because of the storm.
Want to
So
get that burrow flooded.
the burrow would get
Right.
flooded,
Jeez.
but no, they like physically were moved miles and miles away, which is wild. But that's what I have for you all this week. Gopher Tortoise.
Cool. Thanks.
Cool.
Yeah. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we return, it'll be Victoria.
One of my favorite things to do in the summer is to go on a raft or kayak trip down the Mississippi River north of Minneapolis.
Ooh,
Mm.
that's a good one.
It is,
Mhm.
yeah, it is just so peaceful on that stretch of river, and you can see all kinds of amazing wildlife. From bald eagles, peregrine falcons, kingfishers, beavers, and otters. And there are some islands in the middle of
Yeah.
the river you can pull off on and explore, which is super fun. And I just love wandering around on the shore and looking for agates and other cool rocks. But, one of the most exciting things to find might not sound that exciting to many people, but I love finding mussels.
Ooh,
Oh,
So,
yeah.
yeah. Rachel, when you brought up your topic on scallops a couple weeks ago, and I mentioned that I was working on another bivalve, this is the
Yep.
one. I'm going to talk about freshwater
Oh,
mussels.
beautiful.
Yes.
Ooh,
Nice.
fun.
Get some heel splitters and all kinds of good
Oh,
stuff.
we're going to get into the names. People might mistake them for rocks, but they're
Nice.
actually really exciting animals, and they are kind of metal, to be honest. There are
Yeah.
there are a huge variety of freshwater mussels in the Mississippi River, and in fact, the area around Minneapolis is one of the best places to find them. There are freshwater mussels found all over the world, but actually the area of greatest mussel diversity is North America, and there are over 300 species here, and more than 50
Wow.
species that can be found in
Cool.
Minnesota alone. So
That's a lot more than I
Whoa.
was expecting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I say mussel and you're thinking about the kind you can buy at the grocery store to eat, they do have that same basic bivalve body plan, but a different look.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of being purplish black, oval, and about 3 inches long, they come in all kinds of shapes, sizes, and colors. And as Kirk was starting to allude to, they have some amazing names. Spectacle case,
Oh, yeah.
white heel splitter, fat mucket,
Yeah.
pistol grip,
I like that name.
purple wartyback,
Fat mucket is such a great insult
Yeah.
to call somebody.
Oh,
You're just a fat,
fat
mucket.
mucket.
God, what
monkey-
a good insult.
Yeah, monkey face, round pig toe, fat pocketbook. These are just a few of the delightful names that have been attached to the different mussels in our state.
Right.
Beautiful.
And, Rachel, your discussion about keystone species just a short while ago in this episode was a really good lead-in because mussels are a keystone species. They're incredibly important to our freshwater ecosystems. And, like all
beautiful.
bivalves, they're filter feeders. So all day long, they just sit in the mussel beds and pass water through their bodies using their siphons. And any particles that are in the water are collected in the mussel's gills. They digest what is food and they poop out any unused material, including sediment. So actually, a single mussel can filter up to 57 liters. That's 15 gallons of water a day.
Whoa.
Just let that
Pretty
sink
good.
in for a moment.
Pretty good.
So if that's just a single mussel, a whole bed of mussels is amazingly efficient at clearing the water around them. And when the water is
Yeah.
clearer, that lets light penetrate through the water so plants can grow. And the mussels and plants also provide habitat for other underwater creatures. So mussels really are, a keystone species. They're kind of ecosystem engineers in a somewhat similar way to how, beavers radically change the
beavers.
environment to create a new habitat, or gopher tortoises, apparently.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they do. Wild.
Unfortunately, many species of freshwater mussels are critically endangered due to
Yeah.
There
laundry
it
list
is.
river damming, pollution, competition from invasive zebra mussels. However, some cleanup and restoration efforts have been successful, and some species have made something of a comeback, which is encouraging. For example, the Mississippi River historically had 41 species of mussels, and they were all extirpated from the river by the late 1800s due to pollution. Today, there are 29 of those species that are back. So they've been successfully reintroduced.
That's
All of
great.
them are doing okay. Yeah. All right. So at this point, our listener may be a little more on board with thinking mussels are kind of more interesting than maybe they imagined. But I don't think anything I've talked about would qualify so far as metal. Buckle up.
No, I mean, not
Right.
especially.
You say metal is in like hardcore?
Hardcore. We're talking
Yeah.
hardcore. So
Like, that's
I am going
killer.
to talk. Yeah, I'm going to talk now about mussel reproduction.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Okay. So fertilization is not
It always ends up
particularly
back here.
noteworthy. Not noteworthy. The females have eggs in a kind of a brood pouch. The males release sperm into the water. Females take it in through their siphons. It fertilizes the eggs. They develop into larvae. Okay.
Mhm.
Here's a problem. Mussels are sessile. That means they don't move around much.
They don't move.
And,
yeah.
Right.
how...
They're not scallops, right?
Right. They're not scallops. How are they going to get all the little baby mussel larvae to a new spot where they won't be so crowded? It's kind of similar to the problem that a lot of plants have. Getting their seeds farther away
Especially
from...
like
Yeah.
them, so you're not like intermixing either too.
Right, exactly. Well,
Oh, you mean
similar...
like spreading your genetic material far and wide?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So similar to plants that have burrs that hitch a ride on passing animals or, hiker's pants, the baby mussels actually become
Yeah.
temporary parasites on the gills of passing fish.
What?
And
Right. That is
Yeah.
awesome.
they latch on with their little tiny shells, and the gills form
okay.
a kind of a little cyst around them, and then they survive off of the fish's bloodstream, basically, until they go through metamorphosis.
Wow.
Yeah. And then they drop off and
Whoa.
find a suitable spot on the riverbed. Oh, you think that's cool? Wait. Just wait.
Oh.
How do they get onto the fish's
How
gills?
long do I have to wait?
Some
Yeah, how do they get
species-
on? But
Yeah.
ooh.
I don't think
God.
it's probably like I didn't look
think
into
I've
this. I'm
I
not
think
sure.
I've heard of this.
A few days to a few weeks probably, but I'm not sure. But some species do just sort of release their larvae into the water and rely on chance for catching a suitable fish.
Mhm.
Some
Mhm.
species do something a little more devious. Turns
A
out,
little more
Beautiful.
aggressive.
yeah, more aggressive. Turns out some mussel species are incredible mimics. They produce
Yes.
produce
yes, I've
lures.
seen this.
It's wild, you guys. So they
like a
produce
little worm
little fish.
lure.
Yeah,
Whoa.
like they produce lures that resemble the
Oh, no,
prey
fish, right?
of their preferred host species, which in the literature are referred
What?
to
Yeah, I've
as
seen that.
dupes. They're dupes.
Awesome.
That's a great
when
name for that.
the fish will try to eat the lure and it explodes in a cloud of mussel larvae, some of which are inevitably
Yeah,
drawn into
right in
their
the
gills.
face.
Yeah, poof. So the lures are actually extensions of the mother mussel's mantle, which is the fleshy part of the mussel inside the shell.
Right.
And some look like little minnows hanging out just next to the mussel shell. Some look like
Yeah, that's the one I've seen where it just looks like a little swimming fish.
Yeah.
It's so
What?
it's amazing.
Yep, totally. Some look like crayfish, and they every so often the mussel will move its
What?
mantle
I
in
haven't
that
seen
sort
that.
of scuttling
Crayfish?
crayfish kind of way.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Some get this. Some are out at
I'm
the
looking
end
at
of
a
long,
picture.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
some are out.
too close.
Yeah, it's amazing. Some have these long, almost invisible strands, sort of like fishing line, and at the end, there's a bunch of things that look like little squiggly worms, but are actually full of mussel larvae. Some look like
Whoa.
black fly larvae. Yeah, but all of these are just little packets of baby mussels, and they all give the fish a giant poof, unpleasant surprise in the face when chomped on.
Right to the face, yeah.
Yeah, and what's even more
Wow.
amazing
So cool.
to think about is, unlike scallops, mussels have no eyes. So, that fake crayfish you were just exclaiming about is actually part of an animal that has never seen a crayfish. That is just...
How did it do that? How does it know?
The magic of selective pressure.
Yeah,
it doesn't
the
know.
amazing power of evolution is just, it's really mind-boggling sometimes.
That's
and I think
wild.
mussels are a prime example of that. And I wanted to share that. I first learned about
Absolutely.
mussels and their lures from a Vox.com article by Benji Jones, which I highly recommend. I also got some good information from the Freshwater Mollusk Conservation Society, Mississippi Park Connection, and the National Wildlife Federation this week.
Awesome. I'd
That's
heard of that
wild.
before, but then totally forgotten about it.
Oh, yeah.
So I love being, it's like, oh no, oh yeah, no, I've heard of that.
Uh-huh.
So cool.
Oh, I had heard about the parasitizing on fish gills from mussels before, but like I had forgotten about the lures. That's wild.
So
Check out the
amazing.
videos online of them like
it's so
getting the
cool.
big puff to the face of all the
Oh.
little babies.
Yeah.
It's really wild.
We'll definitely have a
Yeah.
picture of a lure on our Instagram. It'll be great.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, so
Sick.
that's what I have for you this week.
Thanks,
And
Victoria.
yeah, that's
Thank
the end of our
you.
show this week. It's been awesome hanging out with you guys as always.
Yeah, it's been great,
And
Victoria.
thanks for listening.
And I
Yeah.
think this is the last show of 2023,
Yeah,
is it
I
not?
think so, yeah.
Oh my gosh, we'll see everybody next year.
year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks everyone for listening to today's show. Be sure to subscribe. New episodes drop every Wednesday, and we love sharing this strange world with all of our listeners. If you would be so kind as to leave us a 5-star review, that would be great. It lets other lovers of the strange discover the show. You can reach out to us on social media by searching for Strange by Nature Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can send us an email as well. Our address is contact@strangebynaturepodcast.com. If you want more information about the show, you can also check out our website, which is strangebynaturepodcast.com. Until next week, get outside, stay curious, and embrace the strange.